tensions between Iran and Israel, and by extension the West, have entered a new phase. After enduring a series of devastating airstrikes on its nuclear infrastructure, Iran has decided to suspend its cooperation with the UN nuclear watchdog. Tehran accuses the International Atomic Energy Agency of becoming a quote-unquote political tool of the West and claims that its civil nuclear program will continue apace. But Trump insists that Iran's nuclear facilities were completely destroyed. And Trump adds a caveat though: "I will not hesitate to bomb Iran again if necessary," he says. So, is Iran's nuclear program dead or alive? It all started with Israel bombing Iranian nuclear sites on 13th June. Operation Rising Lion wiped out the top echelons of Iran's military leaders and nuclear scientists and targeted nuclear sites and missile silos. Iran responded by firing missiles that pierced Israel's air defenses in large numbers for the first time. And then on 22nd of June, the U.S. launched Operation Midnight Hammer and joined Israel's military campaign against Iran. It dropped so-called bunker buster bombs, each weighing more than 13,000 kilograms, on Iran's Fordo nuclear enrichment facility. Also targeted were the nuclear facilities at Natanz and Esfahan. It was the biggest Western military action against Tehran since the 1979 Iranian Revolution. Trump says the nuclear sites have been totally obliterated, an assertion he has repeated since then. But some reports claim that the bombs dropped on Fordo and Natanz did not fully destroy the Iranian nuclear program. One reason could be that Iran moved 400-odd kilograms of its uranium stockpile to a safer location before the U.S. airstrikes.
This is number one priority, like you say. We know that, I had received a letter from the Iranian foreign minister saying that they had taken protective measures already. They did not get into details into what that meant, but clearly that was the implicit meaning of that. So we can imagine that this material is there.
But the U.S. denies that possibility.
Closely, and there was no indication to the United States that any of that enriched uranium was moved prior to the strike.
Now, international reaction was swift. IAEA Chief Grossi acknowledges that Iran's program suffered enormous damage, but without oversight, the world has no way of knowing how much enriched uranium Iran has or where it might be hidden. If Iran indeed possesses the said quantity of highly enriched uranium, then it effectively cripples the UN nuclear agency's ability to monitor Iran's compliance with the Non-Proliferation Treaty, which is a cornerstone of global nuclear security. Time magazine cites a classified U.S. government report as concluding that while the strikes caused significant disruption, they may have only delayed Iran's nuclear program by a few months. The Washington Post newspaper's editorial board writes that Trump's declaration of victory appears to have been, at best, premature. For its part, Iran initially downplayed the damage. Its supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, called the strikes useless. Its foreign minister, Abbas Araghchi, accused the U.S. of exaggerating the effectiveness of the strikes. But Iran's Atomic Energy Agency later admitted that several of its centrifuges had permanently been disabled and that the repairs could take years. So, it all boils down to three key questions, and we pose them to an Indian scholar. First, did US strikes partially or completely destroy Iran's nuclear facilities?
The US strike on Fordo with 30,000-pound GBU-57 massive ordnance penetrator, which uses its weight and sheer kinetic force to reach highly protected deep targets delivered by the B-2 stealth bomber, did massive damage. There is no denial about that. But this damage seems partial in nature.
Next, has Iran's nuclear program been set back by months, years, or decades?
It is true that extensive damage was done, but it is also true that the Iranian nuclear establishment has the capability and know-how to rebuild these damaged facilities. For Iran, it may take a couple of years. More significantly, the nuclear program may keep going if there is an undetected Iranian facility somewhere hidden. This possibility also not be completely or ought not to be completely ruled out.
And finally, did Iran remove its enriched uranium stockpile to a safer location before the US strikes?
That Iran may have moved its 60% enriched uranium cannot be completely ruled out. This is based on not only the lack of expected radiation level, but also on the basis of the statement made by the IAEA chief to its Board of Governors meeting, where it would have been moved, Iran would have moved it to. It's $100 billion question. If they have got any secret facility, they may claim that the uranium enriched to 60% had been damaged in the attack, or they may, if they play honestly, and if they fear that it may be detected, then they may declare it to the IAEA. Hopefully, it may happen.
So, by many accounts, Iran's nuclear program is not dead. It is very much alive, and if Iran's uranium stockpile is intact, it can produce up to 10 nuclear bombs, which raises even more questions. Here are three more issues confronting Iran and the rest of the world. Will Iran quit the nuclear non-proliferation treaty? Does Khamenei have a succession plan in place? And has Netanyahu put Trump's quest for a Nobel Peace Prize in jeopardy? France's President Emmanuel Macron warns that Iran might quit the non-proliferation treaty altogether. And if that happens, the UN sanctions could be reimposed on Iran and the diplomatic clock would run out. So, the short answer to will Iran quit the NPT is that, well, we don't know yet. Next is the question about Khamenei's successor. The 86-year-old Ayatollah Ali Khamenei is reportedly in seclusion and under heavy security. Could he be working on a succession plan? Possibly, yes. There is more than one contender in the reckoning to succeed him. One is his own son Mojtaba, a hardline cleric with strong links to the security apparatus, but no official role in the government. Another is Hassan Khamenei, the grandson of the Islamic Republic's founding father, Ruhollah Khamenei. He has reformist leanings and is widely seen as a more conciliatory figure at home and abroad. And then there are Ali Reza Arafi and Hashem Hosseini Bosheri. The eventual selection could redefine Iran's future direction. The urgency of the task was underlined in September when Israel killed Hezbollah leader Hassan Nasrallah, a close ally of Khamenei's, and before that in May when Iran's president Ibrahim Raisi died in a helicopter crash. Raisi was seen as a top contender to succeed Khamenei. Succession planning gained more traction following the Israeli and US attacks on Iran. Now, Khamenei hasn't publicly expressed any preference for his successor. Some reports say that he has repeatedly opposed the idea of his son taking over, driven partly by concerns over Iran returning to the hereditary rule that ended with the ousting of Mohammad Reza Pahlavi, the last monarch of Iran, in 1979. And then there is the oft-repeated question of what happens to a Nobel for Trump. A Republican Party lawmaker, Buddy Carter, is the latest to join the list of people who have nominated Trump for the Nobel Peace Prize. Carter credits Trump with, quote-unquote, preventing the world's largest state sponsor of terrorism from obtaining the most lethal weapon on the planet. This is not the first time Trump has been nominated. He was previously considered for his role in the Abraham Accords and for mediating talks between North Korea and South Korea. He was nominated in 2018, 20, 21 and 24 for various reasons, including his efforts to broker a deal between Serbia and Kosovo. But Trump launching military strikes on Iran has drawn backlash. Pakistan has withdrawn its Nobel endorsement, citing civilian casualties from the military campaign. On 25th January, on this very show, we'd asked, can Trump win a Nobel? And what should matter most, accomplishment or ideology? Now, Trump accuses the Nobel Committee of bias. He says they only give it to liberals. But today, after everything that's happened between Iran on the one hand and Israel and the US on the other, the question to ask is as much philosophical as it is political. Can the destruction of nuclear sites in a sovereign country be framed as a peace effort?